Hello and welcome to episode 91 of the So Bet Punks podcast about meaning, transcendence, awe and spirituality with a little S. My name's Siobhan.
And I'm Dave.
Yeah.
And you join us on an auspicious occasion.
As always.
Because we are making what do they call it in American football where they change the play at the last minute?
Well, like a timeout, but not a timeout.
No, it's got a name. He'll come to me at some point.
Good job. I thought of it.
We are going to be taking an intermission from our ongoing series of the Eightfold Path.
We've done 4.
We've done 4, so we're halfway through, so perfect intermission, so you can all get your ice creams and...
popcorns.
Yes.
Or whatever else you get in an intermission.
In order to talk about the weekend that we've just had, you could call it a lived experience case study.
It's been varied, for sure.
We were planning on just doing this as the opening segment and then moving on to the Eightfold Path, but I think... we experienced 3 days worth of extraordinary awe, transcendence, and
definitely.
Spirituality.
I think it deserves its own little mention of just 3 different, very different from each other things that give us a sense of all those things that we just thought deserve their own little spiel. So that's kind of what this episode's about. So a little diversion from the Eightfold Path for a bit and back on it next time. But for now...
we're going to talk about Manowar.
Do we want to name all 3 things at the beginning?
Probably. We're going to be talking today about Manowar, Hare Krsna, and William Blake.
Because those 3 things just go together.
And if we can come up with any common thread throughout all 3, and I think there is one actually, but we'll see. We'll see if Dave can shoehorn it in or not.
If you can shoehorn a link, then...
or if I can remember it. Definitely when I was thinking this morning about things, I'm pretty sure I came up with some sort of link. But
well, fair enough. There's no link. These are still 3 things that for some reason we did all in one weekend. It just lined up that way, that all these 3 things...
it was as if the gods were smiling on us.
There you go. And each thing brings us some sense of, meaning, transcendence, or spirituality. And it's just weird. So we thought we'd give it a bit of a review.
And all occurred in London.
Yep.
We travelled there and spent the whole weekend there, which was very enjoyable. We stayed in a hotel that we'd stayed in once before, but we can't, I don't know, maybe it was a dream. Maybe it was a shared dream. We can't work out why we'd been there before, or when we'd been there before, or how, or for what possible purpose we would have even been in that area for.
No idea.
But both of us definitely remember walking through the front door.
Yes.
Is this magic, Siobhan? Let's start with that.
No. I don't think that bit's magic. It's called Dimension. We don't really remember what we've done.
I'm not sure that it is called Dementia. I'm starting to think that we'd never stayed there before.
We have stayed. We've definitely stayed there.
And that it was some sort of Narnia-esque magical world. I wonder if that hotel even exists.
Maybe it didn't. Maybe we didn't do any of what we're about to talk about. Who knows?
Well, we definitely did those things. That's not what I'm suggesting at all. I'm suggesting that the hotel that we stayed in maybe was an apparition. Maybe that's makes sense given the crazy weekend. Who knows? But no, I think we definitely did stay in a random, weird, dilapidated hotel in Oval. Yes, we did. I think it's on booking.com, so I suppose that probably ruins my theorem. But who knows? So we fundamentally went to London for one purpose, which we have spoken about on this podcast before. And that purpose was the 4 heavy metal kings, otherwise known as Manowar, who were playing a gig in the UK, which is a rarity. Yeah. They're not young men anymore. Should we describe Manowar? I feel like anybody listening to this podcast, I mean anybody with a soul must know all about Manowar, right? I feel like, and that's a lovely thought to have about the world, but I don't know if that many people actually do know who Manowar are. Okay. That depresses me. I think we should finish this podcast now so I can go and cry. I think you will have a different description of them to me because I'm a layperson in Manowar. I thought you said because I'm a lady. Because I'm a lady and I got a different opinion of the Man of Warriors. No, I think my opinion of them, or my
reception of them is different to yours. Because you actually do know...
What you're describing there is wrong.
Well, because you've seen them before, you had knowledge of them already. I literally had heard the name. You'd taken me to a bar in Budapest that was a Manowar bar.
And was also closed.
So that was, pretty much my only knowledge of Manowar. They kind of skirt music that I'm into without ever having actually
no skirts involved.
No,
Siobhan.
But as in they're on the periphery of things I've listened to and probably are the biggest version of what they do. Yet I never really came across them in my entire life until the last year, when you've just been ferociously Manowaring at home all hours of the day. So maybe you should describe what they're like.
Well, I'm sort of interested. You're giving me this idea that you've got some sort of very bizarre take on.
No,
them,
it's
so
not bizarre, but I think mine might be harsh. Okay, I'll give mine. So they
harsh.
Well, I don't know. I'm probably not going to be anywhere near as kind as you, but they are kind of like power metal from the 80s, established in 1980 according to your t-shirt, and
same year as Dave. Two great things happened that year.
I wonder if it started in the same month of your birth. Can you imagine just two great things appearing into the world at the same time?
I won't lie, I was actually going to look that up, but I
thought you might. They're American, but they look like they could be European, and they definitely do better in Europe because of the style of power metal that they're doing. It's very swords and sorcery. They're very serious about something that doesn't look very serious. In their kind of what they describe, which is all about men being, covered in metal and singing about metal and having women at their beck and call and swords and all kinds of, not really sorcery. I say swords and sorcery, but it's mostly just swords. I don't think they really talk about wizardry stuff.
They like Odin. They like gods.
Oh,
things
true,
like that.
True. It is a little bit of that. And folksy at times. We saw them do they played the whole of a album which was Hail to England, which kind of hints at New Album and the fact that metal and the particular kind of metal came from Britain, but also then the folksy stuff of Britain as well, so it kind of like talked about folky heritage as well. So yeah, it kind of does everything but in a very particular style. The guy who sings has every octave under the sun, although apparently he's lost one. The people who play are extraordinarily proficient. There's bits of like Iron Maiden style metal, but then it does some real pappy power stuff, which is basically what they're known for.
Pappy is the wrong word to use. That's a massive insult. I was with you until you threw that one in. I think, but basically, what you said is correct. I mean, I think the only thing you missed was the fact that they are. I would say, I don't think it's unfair to say, they are the original power metal band. Yeah,
so no one did it before them. Sort of.
Well, not really. And I think there's an interesting... When you follow their albums through, the first few albums do sound a bit like Nuobum. And they're also clearly very influenced by Dio.
Yes.
And I think Dio...
Who was also doing kind of probably power metal.
Similar sort of thing, but I wouldn't say... But the difference here is that Manowar progressed from what was just a fairly standard heavy metal sound into something which is very much their own, and it's arguable whether that thing that is very much their own is good or not. And I think a lot of people would maybe consider it not that good, but it has gone on to influence vast swathes of metal, and has actually, I think, come back into fashion in a lot of ways in recent years. Which is why you've used the word pappy, because some of the bands that copy Manowar are a bit pappy, but I don't think that you can describe Manowar as anything but true metal. But the interesting thing is I think that progression in sound is quite subtle, but it unquestionably has created something which is undoubtedly them.
Yeah.
So you know immediately if you're listening to Manowar. And the thing is that some of the reasons why you know immediately if you're listening to Manowar, again, could be things that people would critique. So the lyrics are very repetitive across songs. So I don't just mean they repeat the same bit a lot. They don't. I mean, the songs are all they're extraordinarily well written.
Yeah, very technical for, they do take it all very seriously.
Well, that and I think so. Therein lies the real magic of Manowar. Yeah. And the only other sort of band that I can think of that people would think of as being ludicrous, but who take themselves that seriously, and it makes magic, is probably Danzig.
Oh.
You had a look on your face. No, because Kiss don't really take themselves seriously. Not in that respect.
Yeah, maybe.
No,
yeah, not quite,
that way.
Not quite, yeah.
So the thing is, they're completely earnest in what they're doing. So it's this beautiful mixture of this thing that a lot of people, unquestionably, and I wouldn't say this, but unquestionably, a lot of people would say is absurd.
Yeah.
It's literally grown men at this point.
Very
two of them at least are 70, I think. Although they're doing fucking well for it, but
incredible.
But grown men dressed in loincloths with broadswords, singing about being the best and winning the wars.
Yeah,
even though there isn't really any wars, and like Greek gods and being strong and metal has to be true, and often the lyrics are clunky in this sort of rather beautiful poetic way, but they are clunky and they do very much sound like they were written by someone who English is a foreign language.
Yeah, which is what I mean. I did think that they were German to start with. I mean, I'm not saying Germany don't have a good grasp of the English language generally, but they've definitely got a European. Maybe it's because we know offhand that sort of metal goes down really well in Europe.
Well, it might be deliberate. It might be a business move on their part.
Yeah, maybe.
Because if you keep it simple, and you're playing to a lot of people who English isn't their first language, then of course they can chant along with it in a
very true,
whatever.
Very true.
But like you say, ultimately the thing that really makes them stand out is just how absolutely seriously they take it.
Yeah,
and I don't think that that's an act. I don't think it's ever been an act, and it's amazing. It's amazing how they've created this world for themselves in which they can do this with like it's the most important art that has ever been made.
Yeah.
And not only have they done that, because that could be true of some people in a pub who are playing to 4 people laughing at them. But they've done that and become genuinely, in certain countries in Europe particularly, but across most of Europe and to some extent across the world, really big.
Yeah.
And at different times in their career, genuinely massive.
I think there's something to be said about something that looks absurd and silly. It's something about taking something extraordinarily serious for the sake of taking it extraordinarily serious. And what I got from watching them was a very practiced performance for the sake of enjoyment, fun, and they've created a weird little community of people that like their music and follow it, that it does mean everything to. Everyone around us was screaming along the words of which are all about being strong and having community, be it clunky and be it very, men being men and everyone being strong. But the underneath of it all is this kind of really strong, powerful unity and joy for the sake of unity and joy. And they're not political. They're not trying to be or say anything. They're just doing something because they genuinely enjoy it. They genuinely think this is worth putting so much effort into for the sake of pure performance and bringing joy to other people. And it's just, I personally just thought it was really refreshing to see something for nothing other than that. Really serious about fun and just pure joy.
Well, yeah, we were talking about how sarcasm at some point, I think within the context of the Eightfold Path, I think how sort of sarcasm and irony has kind of taken over everything so much that we've become the snake that eats itself.
Yeah.
And this is a snake that is straight as an arrow. Like, it is not eating itself on any level. It is just what it is. And I will say this as well, that thing about the crowd, I mean, the genuine community that this thing has created, which I think is undoubted, and again, across the world. And it will make you laugh. So, I mean, everything we're saying now has unquestionably a funny side to it. But Manowar on their website has always had this section. I don't know what it's called. It's called something like fans or something. And basically you can just write your message to Manowar on there, and it's it's mostly people from Eastern Europe, quite a lot of people from Greece. I haven't been on there for a while. It might have changed now, I don't know, but definitely back in the day. And again, and I don't say this, I hope this doesn't sound like I'm talking down to anybody, but they are often writing in broken English, and they're writing in English, so they often come out with some quite funny sentence structures and things like that. But it's all about, literally like Manowar saved my life. Yeah. And it's, if you ever want, if you're wondering about what we're talking about, it's worth going on their website and just having a look at this thing, because it will make you laugh, but it is also very beautiful.
I also have a horrible feeling that people who have never listened to them are going to go, gosh, I'm going to go listen to them now. And it depends what song you come across first. You might think we're fucking lunatics.
Well, no,
which in a way we maybe are.
Well, maybe we are. That's fine. Yeah. But musically, they for what they do, of course, there's no question. If you're into sort of jazz or something, and you put on a Manowar song, you're going to think, what the fuck is this?
Well, I think even if you're into metal, but maybe, say for example you're only into like a particular kind, and maybe you've not really dabbled too much into, because I do think you're correct in saying Dio is a pretty good segue to this sort of music.
And who doesn't like Dio? I mean, if you don't like Dio, you are not my friend.
Yeah, true.
But I sort of mildly quote Manowar.
But I feel like there might be people that like have heard Dio and thought, that's a little bit silly.
Yeah, okay.
So if you think that's a little bit silly, you're going to think Manowar is fucking absurd. But that is the point. The point is they're very serious about this very silly thing. And I think we talked about this before. We talked about Wacken when we went, and this kind of sense of community that's just, I think the metal world will definitely think, nerds, kind of odd people all getting together and loving life. That's not unheard of. We're not really spooked by that. We're not really surprised by that necessarily, but it is definitely a thing that happens. And I definitely think this pappy, over the top.
Stop using the word pappy, please. Okay, but
this it's offending you, I know. But it is something about this over the top, being serious about something that's very not serious. It's just it is only joy. It is only fun.
So that was kind of what I was going to say.
Yeah.
So there's this interesting thing. So if you going back to that thing on their website where loads of people are saying about how Manowar have saved their life and how they're making them strong, and they're only going to believe in true metal for the rest of their life, and they will die for Manowar and this sort of stuff, which is basically 10 a penny on that thing.
Yeah.
I remember when I went to see them before, I was much younger. It was a long time ago. It must have been 20 years ago, I think. And me and my mate, me and a couple of mates, were like, tee-hee, aren't Manowar silly? Look at them silly men in their loincloths. Yeah. Aren't they ridiculous? And then we listened to their music, and we were like, tee-hee, isn't this music funny? But kind of good, but sort of also hilarious.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be amazing to see them live? And it would just be so hilarious. It would be brilliant.
Get so drunk. We'll be so dumb.
We'll be so cool, and we'll go in. And so we went to, and it was in Birmingham. I think we might have had this conversation slightly already when we talked about Manowar before, but we went to Birmingham. In a way, it was so absurd. It was like two people thinking they were being really clever and fun, and going all the way to Birmingham from London, just to laugh and sort of enjoy Manowar a bit. And we both liked Manowar. We had that kind of relationship with them where it was like, we liked them, but we liked them in a kind of ironic way, and we were clever and we're cool and whatever. But the second that we walked into the room, I remember just being struck by the fact that we then if anybody was the normal people there, it was us. Because we were laughing at the Manowars. We were thinking, oh, aren't these people funny? Just like probably most other people do. Second that we walked into the room, it was like, oh, shit, we're the idiots.
Yeah.
We've come to laugh at this, and it's not funny.
Yeah.
Really. And nothing about it is funny.
And I wish I could be a bit, I'm a little bit, I wish I want to be a part of this.
Well, I remember thinking this about just to bring this back to religion a little bit, or spirituality or whatever. My whole family have this real bugbear about Christianity, and there's a family in my family, doesn't really matter who go to church and stuff, and they're perfectly nice about them, but they talk about them in this kind of worried way, like, oh my God, they go to church, it's like, they're just doing that with their life. And then I look at their life and I sort of think, yeah, but they're probably happy going to church. It's fine, you're judging them, but none of my family are particularly happy. I think that's probably fair to say. So you end up you're sort of pointing and laughing at the other people that are doing the funny thing.
Yeah.
But you're not like your life is better than theirs. In fact, it's worse. And I think that's what we do as humans.
Yeah.
We look at other people who are doing things that seem a bit weird, or even not a bit weird, but just different to what we're doing, and we say, "Oh, look at them."
Yeah.
But actually, them probably most of the time are, at least, they're doing something with themselves. And so anyway, so that's how I felt about this Manowar gig.
Yeah.
You got there and you were just like, shit, these people are really genuinely getting something out of this.
Yeah.
And I'm just the pillock at the back, dressed like a skateboarder, thinking, I've turned up and there'll be loads of people laughing at Manowar and we'll all have a laugh together. It'll be brilliant.
Yeah.
And then these people are actually forming lifelong friendships.
Yeah.
And, enjoying this thing
and
without any
along.
earnestness and, with total earnestness and without any irony. And, yelling along and losing their minds and so who's the fool?
Exactly.
And don't get me wrong. I mean, that's not, that's so long ago that I've almost forgotten about that experience. It's not like we, Manowar come back to the UK and I'm like, right, I'm going and I'm being serious. I'm not having that again. But by this time, I've come round to this now, I suppose.
Well, and also it was a ridiculous, fateful. I mean, it's not really that fateful because we ended up buying tickets on the day they came out, and turns out you could buy tickets up until the day they played. But
I will say, though, it was Brixton Academy, and Brixton Academy was full.
Yes.
Which is, just another thing about their popularity. It's insane. I mean, that's insane.
Yeah, insane.
A band that, Brixton Academy is not massive or anything, but it's a really big venue. And when you look at everyone else that was playing there, it was basically pop artists, some country and western pop artists, and like big legendary bands, and then there's just little old Manowar.
Manowar basically fill in the place,
and they filled the place. Yeah.
Well, what I really liked about it was you just, I can't remember why, for what reason, all of a sudden you bought all of Manowar's albums and started really hardcore listening to them.
I bought one. I can tell you why. I found one in a charity shop, and it was one of the greatest things I've ever heard in my life, and I couldn't stop listening to it.
Fair enough. And then the back catalogue landed in our house. And I remember, for whatever reason, I think I was looking up tickets for something else. You were about to go play a gig with your band, so it was about 10 in the morning. You were just about to leave.
We did talk about this a few weeks ago.
Oh yeah, okay, sorry.
And then a story we've told.
Well, there we are. I'm through it now. But yeah, the tickets just happened to be there, and in 5 minutes' time, these tickets are going on sale. Holy shit, we need to buy them. And so they, it just all kind of fell into place, and then we ended up in this
again, a bit like this hotel
place
that didn't really exist.
Yeah, well,
it did feel a little bit like magic. But yeah, so I think it's fair to say that and maybe this is one of the things that I think might be a thread throughout all of the stuff we're going to talk about today. What you bring to something is what you get out of it. I mean, we've talked about this idea before. So, for example, the album that Manowar were going to play the entirety of, and it was only a part of the set, they played loads more, I didn't know, and I didn't have. I had a bunch of their albums. I'd known them for a long time, listened to them for a long time, know a lot of their songs, but I didn't really know anything off that album. So we bought that album and then listened to it loads because it's like, well, they're definitely playing this, so we should probably try and learn the songs and stuff. And it's definitely not my favourite of their albums by any means, but it's still great. And I'm sure most people would say, well, what's the difference between one and another?
I mean,
and I would strongly disagree with that, but it's understandable. But by doing so, I don't know, it gives you... I don't think I've felt anticipation for a gig in the way that I felt anticipation for this gig for quite a long time, actually. Because we had spent such a long time just like buffing up on it.
Yeah.
And the only time we've ever done this before, I think this is fair to say the only time we've ever done this before, is that when we very first got together, we went to Prague on a bit of a sort of stolen weekend, the details of which are not important.
And we'd been together 2 months.
Yeah. And yeah. Anyway, again, the details aren't necessarily important. But we went to Prague and thought, let's have a look and see if there's any gigs on. Yeah. And stumbled across a gig that basically said something like punk gig, or it said the name of the band and it said punk. And we were just, okay, well, that's the one then. And then probably in the excitement of having just met each other and, having just got together and stuff, we were like, right, let's become the biggest fans of this band ever. And then we'll go and watch them. And it was a band called Boy, who were from Prague.
Juggernaut style. I mean, their style was attempting to be that, but they definitely weren't.
Yeah.
I think even pop punk probably doesn't cover it.
But we did do that, and we watched all their videos on YouTube, and I think, well, that was it. I think it was just through YouTube.
Learned a good 5 or 6 songs, which is all we could find.
Then got absolutely wasted on the day of the gig, went to the gig, and had as I remember it, had one of the best times of our life. And this is now 11 years ago.
With all 20 other people at that gig.
Absolutely.
In this club.
And probably the other 18 were just like, oh, this is a Tuesday night and we've just come to see our mate's band.
Do you know what? This is another thing. This band were very serious about fun.
Yes.
Like, they had a curtain drop. I mean, literally 20 people in a club. They had a big curtain with their name on it. They dropped the curtain. They're behind it in their full turbo jug end outfits and makeup. They've got fucking dollars printed with their band logo on it. They are throwing into the audience. It is so serious about fun.
Yeah.
And we came at it with the same attitude, which we didn't even know they were going to be this serious about fun. We'd been really serious about being their biggest fan. And it was just like
But it feels almost,
magic.
and that was kind of the point I was going to make. It was almost like manifesting an experience. And I don't really use manifesting in that horrible spirituality way. But I mean, it is the same thing.
Or
but,
that,
I don't mean that any magic was involved. I just mean like we manifested this experience by saying, we're going to take this thing, maybe not seriously. I don't think we were serious as such. Yeah, but we're going to put some effort into this thing.
Importance.
Yeah, give it some importance. Just pretend. Because the other thing is, I think we probably both assumed, well, this band, it could be massive in like we could have been turning up to a gig where like 5,000 people were there, or a gig where one person was there, and it was closer to the one person. but it was just like, I don't know, we sort of made this experience which we've never forgotten. We've still got boy dollars on our wall. We've both got boy t-shirts that we still get out every now and again. We've been talking for the past decade about getting boy tattoos.
I bought their album online.
And
probably one of the only ones they made.
And then weirdly met someone from an old pop punk band who's mates with their singer, and then that anyway, I mean that was a whole other thing that happened a few years ago that's not wildly, well, I mean kind of, that was insane as well. But we won't go into that anyway. But it's about so I suppose it's fundamentally just about what you bring to it. Yeah. Isn't it?
Yeah, what you bring to it and what you're going to put your importance in. Like,
well, yeah, but that's a good point. What is more like in that moment? This is another. I think this is a bit of a meditation thing that I've taken. In that moment, for us, we had tickets to a gig. What was more important than being in that room with Manowar?
Exactly.
And you could have treated that gig in any way that you wanted.
Yeah.
And of course, things affect that. You might be in a bad mood. There might be whatever. You might have brought a bunch of baggage with you. Who knows? But even within that context, you're still there. Yeah. You're there and you're with a bunch of other people that are there.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's about attitude even. It's just like if you just have to experience the thing. But seeing a band like Manowar who do take it so seriously and in a crowd of people who also take it so seriously, and that's rare.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not like most bands don't have that sort of fan base and most gigs aren't like that gig. No. So, I mean, you have to accept that. But sorry, I'm just going to keep using this term. Like it's manifesting a good time by what you bring to it and what effort you put in.
Is 100% that, and it makes me think of all those gigs where I know that I've gone half-heartedly, or I've been a bit miffed about, I'm not stood in the right place, or the people around me are annoying me, and you're just like,
the metal shows that we've been going to, it's often, God, everyone smells.
But it's like, if you choose, it's very CBT, isn't it? If you choose, not CBT, but if you choose to focus on those things, then you are choosing your experience to be negative, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Those things are going to happen to you, but you can also, it's glass empty, glass full, isn't it? It's you could also choose to have a better time. I just totally believe in it. It's probably, they'd be argued that that's a privileged thing to say, or so on and so forth.
But privilege doesn't matter when you're standing in a room experiencing something.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? None of those things that you bring with you in that context. You're right. Yeah. I mean, it is privileged. It was the most expensive concert ticket we've ever bought.
But I mean to say it's just the ability to choose what you're going to focus on is a very, it's a very Buddhist thing. It's about, looking down. Things will always be worse. Appreciating what you have. And at any moment, you could just have a better time. And 100% what you put in is what you're going to get out of it. So it did make me think of all the gigs that I'm now planning on going to. I'm just like, all right, I'm going to fucking be involved. I'm going to I'm going to be where I want to be. I'm going to make some effort to listen to these things. I'm going to make sure that when I go to these things, I'm actually going to have a really good time. You're there, get on with it, enjoy yourself, like be lucky.
And so in bringing this to a close in regards to this gig, for you then, as someone who maybe came as a non-Manowar warrior, as it were, was it a spiritual experience? I think we need to ask this about all of these experiences we've had. Was that a spiritual experience?
Huge connection with everyone around you.
Spiritual.
Huge feeling in the room, and you can't really, and this is where it becomes spiritual, because you can't really describe exactly what that feeling is. And incredible that 4 people with almost no backing track, really playing the hell out of their instruments, managed to make something feel so...
They didn't have a backing track. They had a keyboard player behind a...
okay, fair enough.
They didn't have a backing track.
Beautiful stuff. Because it was really just incredible that they could actually do something that got everyone the way that they did. People screaming along, and not just, young, up for it people. A lot of older men hugging their older men friends, screaming the words along.
By the way, you say men.
So meaningful.
Can I just, because I think it's important to point this out, it was a much more diverse crowd than I thought it was going to be.
Okay, so
I mean, it wasn't 50-50 men and women, but there was also there was people from all different ethnicities, and I was surprised. I thought it was going to be a Brixton Academy full of white men, and in fact, people who I've talked to about going to Manowar have said things along those lines, and it was not that at all. I don't think.
But the reason I bring up the men thing,
it's very much for men. You're right.
But that's not why I bring it up. It was just seeing. So I've seen people at gigs just like enjoying the music and kind of like looking at each other and being like, yeah, this is good, isn't it? This was men like emphatically hugging their friends. Like, this is so important to me. This is so amazing. And just screaming the words at their friends and just seeing meaning for other people. So maybe Manowar haven't been my favourite band for the the end of time, but I can understand that music is powerful and ridiculous, and my takeaway is I really appreciate effort put into something that's just fun, and that amount of effort put into performing for other people, really just the only point is to have fun, unity and community, and it's just so serious about an absurd version of this. But to see how much it meant to some other people in that room is really contagious. It's just amazing to see. This is one of the better days of your life, and I get to be here watching you
I hadn't thought of it like that,
be so emotional in a way that I wonder what your emotional world from an outside usually looks like. And I'm not, that's a judgment, but it's just
probably fair. Yeah.
But it was just a really, really wonderful thing. So spiritual in some respects, but just experiencing meaning making was really nice. Really nice. How about you? I'm assuming much. But
no. I mean, definitely a sense of awe, a genuine sense of awe about the sheer... I was going to say professionalism, but that makes it sound really cold. Like, it was such a good show.
Yeah.
And they were so good. Like... It is amazing. I mean, I think 4 bass solos might have been a bit too much for one gig. But having said that, all 4, I don't know if I've mentioned that yet, but all 4 of those bass solos were absolutely extraordinary.
Yeah.
And again, this is a 70-year-old man. I mean, I don't think his hands should be able to do that anymore. The singer, again, a 70-year-old man with the range of, like, frankly, it's not my style of singing, really. It's
and
not what I'm into.
And he's doing it in a funny way.
Yeah, of course, but it's still amazing. It's amazing he could do.
And then on top of that, lost because there's quite
it must have been very high.
Yeah.
And then the stage show was just absolutely brilliant. They were shooting fire out of things. They were loads of stuff going on, and so awe in that context. Now, spirituality, I think it was a spiritual experience. I think it was about as close to going to church as I've got in a long time. But then I could say that about a number of different gigs I suppose I've been to, and you could probably plot that. And they're never of a similar ilk as far as genre is concerned, but they're always of a similar ilk. I mean, that thing you're describing of people hugging and singing along is probably a big part of that.
And it's been a while, I think, since since one of those. Actually.
Yeah, definitely. Well, yeah, definitely. It's been a
Yeah.
long time since I've gone to a gig and been blown away by. Well, maybe that's not entirely true.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what I've been telling myself, and probably that's just, again, thinking myself into being negative about the state of music, although not that Manowar have anything to do with the state of current music, of course.
Bring back Manowar music.
But yeah, no, I think overall a spiritual experience.
Yeah.
So then we went to bed. We got up the next day and quite early went to the Ratha Yatra. I don't know if it's I think it's just Ratha Yatra.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a Hare Krsna festival, which happens it happens in London around about this time every year, but it actually happens in cities all over the country and all over the world.
Yeah.
And I think it's 200 cities across the world have this at different points during the summer. I don't quite know how that works. They must have some on the same day, I suppose.
Yeah.
It's based on a Hindu festival, which is called Juggernaut Ratha Yatra. I'm definitely not ever saying any of these right. Which is apparently 5,000 years old and is associated with the Puri area in India.
Okay.
Now, with Hinduism, we might have mentioned this before, but often Hinduism does not work as Christianity works. And the colonial project created this idea of Hinduism as a kind of way, a kind of type of, at least working in the same way as Christianity, along with every other religion.
Yeah.
And so we understand Hinduism as this kind of, as like a religion, but actually it's not really a religion. It's a bunch of different practices. It's a bunch of different rituals that have kind of been bundled into one. They certainly do all connect with each other, and fundamentally they're all kind of in the name of the same god, which is Krishna or Rama or probably lots of other names, but it's fundamentally the same being, I guess. And also place, particularly in India is a sort of spiritual country. There's places in India which kind of hold the same spiritual power in the eyes of certain people, certain members of Hinduism, which are almost like the equivalent of like a ritual, or they're the equivalent of a prayer almost, like the place.
So to be in those places is a spiritual thing to do.
Yes.
Like it is like prayer. It's like a ritual, just being there.
Yeah.
So to pray and do rituals and pilgrimages to these places, it's a huge.
It's just
huge
different.
thing.
I suppose it's
and we
viewed
can't word
in a
it
way
because
that
we're trying to put it into Western idea.
Yeah, exactly.
Already. Yeah,
It doesn't work. So like a Christian pilgrimage is a thing.
Yeah.
A Hindu pilgrimage looks quite similar, but it's just completely different in context.
Yes.
I suppose.
Okay. Yep. No, I get it. I get it by not getting it. Yes.
Yeah. But so this is from a specific area in India, which is sort of important in the context of But and Jagannatha actually translates to juggernaut.
Yes.
Which is the large truck which is pulled through the streets of whatever city it happens to be in. I don't know, how would you describe those trucks? I mean, they're absolutely amazing.
Well, they look like carts, but carts doesn't describe it, but it's built like a cart. It has a huge set of wheels on the back, somewhere between a cart, a tractor, and a fucking wheelbarrow. But massive enough that someone's in it driving. There's 2 tiers to it. So there's the top tier has about 3 or 4 people there. There's a monk on the front. There's a big kind of like place where you can keep food in the middle. There's also an extra extension bit at the top where a bit of material is there. It's kind of like a tent almost right on the top.
Which is the most striking thing about it to view, right?
It's amazing.
Yeah, and there's 3 of them.
And yes, so then there's 3 of them in this Hare Krishna festival. Each have their own driver, each have their own monk on the front. And I imagine there's a few per thing. I say monk, I hope I'm getting that right. I imagine that they're monks.
Yeah. Devotees.
Probably. We'll go with devotees. On the side, they're all very brightly decorated, reds and greens and pinks and oranges, just every colour. And on the side is of the like tent part is the Hare Krishna chant, so that everyone around can clearly see the words to the chant that's probably going to happen. The wheels are huge. I mean, I'm not really describing just how big this is. There's already, I would say, 10 people on each one at any one time. The wheels of this are humongous. I mean, the whole thing, top to bottom, is probably
20 foot tall?
Yeah, I was going to say a 2-story house, kind of like height-wise, quite easily. And yeah, 3 of them being winched through London. Like, we didn't really understand how they were pulling along until we saw it. But there's 2 ropes at the front of each one. And at various times, the crowd, we'll get into how big the crowd is in a minute, but can pull on these ropes. I would say at any given time, there's probably about 60 people at the front on these ropes pulling. And as they pull, the person operating the cart can winch along the rope. And that's how it gets basically, like you say, dragged through the parade wherever it's going.
Well, and it starts at Hyde Park Corner.
Yeah.
And then when it sets off, it goes down Piccadilly, which for those people that don't know London is like one of the busiest sort of shopping streets, I suppose.
And I think it goes down Park Lane first to get to Piccadilly, which is, so it's just like...
Well, a little bit of Park Lane, yeah.
Very busy, very plush, like hotels and shops on these roads.
Yeah, and obviously the road is closed for it, and then it ends in Trafalgar Square, which again is, I mean, even if you don't know London, you probably know Trafalgar Square.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of one of the most central parts of London.
Yeah,
so
very iconic.
I don't really know what we expected from going to this thing, so maybe it's worth just mentioning. I mean, I've read a decent amount of Hare Krishna books. We've talked about it a little bit on the podcast, probably here and there, and I think if it hasn't become obvious to you yet, or this is your first time listening, both of us are quite interested in various world religions and spiritual paths. And this was one that I had absolutely no idea of this festival happening. It's been happening in London for ages. I think the 56th year this was.
Wow.
So during my youth, particularly being in the hardcore scene in the 90s, there was quite a lot of, maybe a lot is pushing it, but there was it was a bit Hare Krishna adjacent, because that was just the sign of the times, and that was what was happening. And we talked about Shelter, and we talked about Ray Capo a lot. But I was very aware of the Hare Krishnas in Soho, and they used to sell us books, and we used to chat with them and whatever. And they'd dance through Soho. I think they still do. I think once a day, pretty much. They just dance through and sing and then go home. And that was very much a thing that I remember, but from my youth, and like I say, and I kind of was interested in all of this stuff, but I had no idea that this festival happened. Absolutely none whatsoever, which I suppose you would just happen to bump into. I mean, back then there was no internet or whatever, so I wouldn't have known in that context. But yeah, I was amazed by how big it was. I suppose we went just because I saw a picture of it in a book as these massive tents, and thought, wow, that looks interesting. Where's that? Assuming it was in India. And I've studied it on my course a little bit as well, and it was brought up in that. It seemed to be, it's funny, it went from this thing that I had no idea existed to suddenly I saw it in a bunch of different places. So I just looked it up, and it just, by chance, when I looked at it, and it wasn't very long ago, it was the day after Manowar. And we were like, oh, shit, we're in London, we might as well go to this thing. Yeah,
just to see what it is. I guess when we first looked it up, I wasn't really sure how, like, participatory we were going to be. More just like, are we just going to go and look at it? Are we going to chant? Are we going to follow the whole thing? Like, what are we going to do? And up until probably the morning, I still wasn't like 100% sure what we were definitely going to do.
Yeah, and the idea is that you walk that path amongst all of these people and you chant the Hare Krishna mantra, and I thought that would be wonderful. I'm not sure that there was only a couple of points where we were sort of involved enough in it where so we did chant a little bit here and there, but I think I don't know, it wasn't quite how I imagined it, which is fine. I mean, it wouldn't be. It was much more, I suppose, just the practicalities of, you just assume you're going to be dancing down the street with a load of Hare Krishnas. I also, how can we say this? So I think that we both immediately felt a little bit like ducks out of water when we arrived. I wasn't necessarily expecting this, and this is not in any way a threatening thing to say. No racism involved in this at all, but almost everybody was Indian. And we had this conversation at the time. Hare Krishna is fundamentally, if you simplify it right down, is Hinduism brought to the West. So generally speaking, Hare Krishnas are white people, or not just white people, but Western people who have kind of got into Hinduism through Hare Krishna. Again, very simple, but give or take, that's more or less certainly how it started. But of course, this event was put on by Hare Krishnas, but of course it is actually an Indian event. which has a much longer history than that.
Yeah.
And so as a result of that, the vast majority of people there weren't Hare Krishnas, I assume. They were Hindus.
Yeah.
Or people or culturally Hindus, or they were whatever. And that didn't necessarily affect anything, but I think we both felt a little bit like, oh, have we just, almost like turning up at a wedding that you've not been invited to and just dancing.
100%.
That's how I felt a little. Like if I had this imagination where we would just chant and go along and maybe dance a bit, whatever. But I felt a little bit like, oh, actually, it's almost similar to Manowar, but different in the context. So the Hare Krishnas were obviously proper Hare Krishnas. So it wasn't like we were just going to go in and be like, come on, guys, I'm one of you. Because we're not.
Yeah.
And then everybody else was basically, obviously, culturally or actual Hindus.
Yeah.
And then there was just us. And I felt a little bit like no matter what, I was kind of potentially treading on people's feet. Now, no one treated us that way. It wasn't in any way. It was no one's fault apart from our own inner worlds. But it did mean that I think the thing that I imagined it being was that we would just sort of get caught up in it.
Yeah.
And it was, for me anyway, it became impossible to get caught up in it. And I found myself just feeling like I was just going along looking at something that is for somebody else.
Yeah, I think you described it exactly correctly. I just so didn't want to, and this is all your inner world and my inner world and my anxiety, and just none of this is real, but I just so didn't want to be like a weird cultural voyeur of
100%
someone else's thing, which is silly. Like you say, Hare Krishna is, they're definitely not, it's not a recruitment drive, but it's definitely a welcoming thing. Like the whole point, Hare Krishna, of all the religions, all the kind of religious groups that are quite public, are the most welcoming. Like their whole spiel about being dressed so obviously in orange and handing out their books is because they so want to, give it away and to welcome people and talk about what they're doing. So of all the groups to join into, like intellectually, I know it's the one that would absolutely love you to be there. But the realisms on the day was, this is a huge thing. It is so busy. And I just feel like I always feel like I'm in people's way anyway. But I felt very much like I'm in someone's way who really, people were getting buses from fuck knows where to be there. And so I just felt a little bit like, shit, I should probably be over there looking at it and appreciating it.
Yeah.
But
and they all knew what they were doing, I think, as well.
Exactly.
Like, not that there was any particular rules to it, but
everyone knew where to go.
Yeah, when we sort of joined the crowd, it was sort of like, is this the bit that we stand in?
Yeah, we had no idea. Whereas everyone knew what to do and how to go about it, and had brought food, and just everyone knew because it's their culture, and it was a stark reminder that this is not my culture. So am I here as a guest or am I here as a weird voyeur? And I thought prior to going, I'm gonna feel like a really welcomed guest, but it felt a bit more like, holy shit, I've done this wrong. And I hope I'm not in anyone's way. And no one made us feel like that. It cannot be more clear. No one made us feel that way. We could have freely chanted. If we'd have just decided, it's a bit like what we said about the gigs. If you turn up and you decide, I know that I'm not Hare Krishna, but I am going to give it my all. I'm going to sing every fucking word. And I know that my intention is one of, I want to share this experience with people whose experience it is and really appreciate their culture. Then outwardly, no one would have treated us any different, but we'd have been more involved, felt more involved. Then if you're screaming Hare Krishna at Hare Krishna and they're screaming at you back, then you're a part of it. But we made it so that we weren't a part of it through our own inner worlds being acted out in our anxious kind of awkwardness that we had. Yeah,
totally.
It meant that it felt like, and because it was so busy, it meant that this huge group of people where you'd have been overwhelmed by chanting and it could have been a spiritual abundance, felt like, a panic attack. I didn't have one, but it's like I felt kind of stressed.
But you're right. But you're totally right. It's the exact opposite of what we were just talking about in the context of Manowar. It's that we brought our own stupidities, I suppose, to something, and as a result we'll get to it, I suppose, but I mean, I would say probably got almost nothing out of it. It's interesting. There's a couple of things you said there. One about how you felt like when you were going to arrive, you were going to be a welcome guest, and then turning up and just being one of a number of a crowd is in of itself. It's exactly how I felt too, but it is in of itself a kind of. It's quite. I don't want to call it a colonial sort of attitude, but it almost is, isn't it? Yeah. It's sort of like, these people are going to be really happy that we're there, and then you arrive and you realise we don't mean anything.
No.
I don't think I thought, these people are going to be really happy that we're there. Like, oh my God, it's Dave and Siobhan, like by any means, but like just that you would be. And there's another aside to that, which is that I've never met a Hare Krishna in my life, or been anywhere near a Hare Krishna in my life, and I've been near quite a few, who hasn't tried to tell me about Hare Krishna. But when you're in the group, they don't need to anymore.
Exactly.
They just assume that we are probably at least sort of vaguely interested.
Yeah.
So they're not. So there was one point where we left the parade a bit and we were walking down the road and they were all there talking to people and telling them about what was going on, and they completely ignored us because we were part of the thing. And that was it was almost like a Jehovah's Witness knocking on your door, and you open the door and them saying, "Oh no, actually not you," and then walking off, because you, on the one hand, you'd be like, "Oh, thank God for that," but on the other hand, you'd probably be a bit like, "Oh, why not?"
Yeah, no, it is. I think you described it really well. Let's
ask the question, because I think you're probably about to answer the question.
Yeah, okay.
So did you find that a spiritual experience? I mean, if you compare the two, just very quickly, Manowar and a Hare Krishna festival, you would assume the Hare Krishna festival was more set up for you to have a spiritual experience.
Yeah, I think it's definitely what we brought to it, probably detracted from it. I'm not put off doing it again. I think I now know. It's so silly, isn't it? It's the fear of the unknown in a little way. Like, there's tiny little practical things I now know that I think, okay, I think I could go with a more involved attitude. I just think it was immediately feeling like, oh, wait a minute, we don't get this because this isn't ours. Yeah. So we didn't bring food. We didn't stand in the right place. I had my legs out and I immediately was looking around thinking, holy shit, it's modesty.
Well, yeah, but then funnily enough, but you see, you kept saying that. And actually there was loads of people with their legs out.
No,
but the thing
one other woman.
No.
One other woman. Men can do what they want, but one other woman. No. And so I was just very aware, because when we went to the retreat, it was definitely the same sort of thing. It's not a rule, but it's a modesty thing. And it's definitely a thing. Anyway, it doesn't matter, because all these things got in my head and made me slightly separate from the thing. Witnessing, though, so in the same respect that I was a little bit separate from Manowar, although I knew the songs, whereas Hare Krishna, I guess I know the words, I don't know the songs. Still witnessing other people's joy is still a powerful thing. And you are swept up in it. And it is a lot to be around. And it's so loud. And it's so, I know we weren't in it for a lot of it. But there was just witnessing pure joy and, hugging and just love for the sake of love. And just all of that was really lovely. I think I was hoping it would be more spiritual. And I guess because you think you might be more of a part of it. But then maybe that's, more for all us, because we aren't a part of that. You're going to someone's spiritual and cultural event. And I think we half thought, oh, we'll get it when we get there. No. I think you're meant to already kind of know it. And the anxieties and the little silly brains got in the way a little bit, which is a shame, because I think I would definitely go again. More prepared sounds so silly, but I think I do mean that. I think just a little bit more prepared for it, because I think there is something, I don't know much about Hare Krishna, but I understand the power of the chanting, the power of the dancing, and the power of just losing yourself in it. But you can't lose yourself in something you don't fully understand or know. And so I think, I felt a bit like I was just watching, and I didn't want to be disrespectful, and that was something I just felt like, I hope I'm not being disrespectful. The reality was no one gave a shit, because they were so involved in the thing in the way that it's meant to be that, they just are happy that everyone's there and don't really care. How about you?
A number of different extraordinary experiences. I thought that that watching people drag those carts and just the sheer amount of effort and work that had both gone into them in the first instance, and then were going into just moving them through these streets was absolutely incredible. And I can't even imagine, like, having seen actual Hindu festivals where, you know, there's all sorts of Hindu festivals obviously that happen, but you see the most extreme ones often, and I'm sure a lot of people have, you know, the sort of self-flagellation type stuff. Like if you actually witness something like that, it would be awe-inspiring.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways this was, it was just incredible what they were doing on a literally a physical basis. I definitely immediately felt like I was a voyeur. Yeah. And that took me out of the moment. But there was one moment, so we were kind of right at the back, which didn't help to begin with, because you weren't really in it as such. And it wasn't entirely clear. They were chanting the mantra, but it was on some speakers that, if you were at the back, were quite a long way away. Yeah. So it sort of felt like that thing of, if I was going to start chanting it to try and get into it, I would have felt like someone who started singing along with a band when the power went out, and it's just me, you know.
And you don't really know the words, you just go, oh.
No, yeah. And they're singing it differently all the time. Yeah. That's the other thing. I've learned that mantra. I do know the words to that mantra, and I've got my own way of doing it, I suppose. But I didn't think it was my own way. I thought it was how everyone did it. But they were doing it in all sorts of different ways, and I was like, oh my God, should have done my homework. But there was one moment when we sort of nipped ahead, and we actually did get in between two of the carts, and we got right into the centre of it. And I would say for literally about a minute, no more than a minute, I felt really caught up in it all of a sudden. And I don't know, I can't explain the feeling. There's not really anything specific to explain. It was just this feeling of being like, oh wow, I'm here. Oh, this is it. Yeah, this is the thing. And then that passed very quickly. Yeah. It made me think a lot about, I may have talked about this sort of theory on this podcast before, but I don't think I have, is that if you were going to decide to worship in a straight up religious sense, then the cultural aspect of which version, because really, in my head anyway, and I think certainly this is a Hindu idea as well, you know, God is God. So if you're worshipping God via the means of Jesus and Christianity, or if you're worshipping God through the means of Krishna and Hinduism or Islam and Muhammad or whatever, it doesn't really matter. It's all the same thing ultimately. And so the way that you make a decision about how you're going to do that is probably just a cultural one. It's just the one that you're most comfortable with, where you're not going to feel like a voyeur. And in fairness, I think if I went to church, I'd feel like a voyeur as well. So maybe I'm just doomed in that context. But it was something that I just hadn't thought about. I hadn't thought about how much I would feel like I was separate from the thing. And of course, being separate from the thing is the antithesis of spirituality or But there's one other really big thing that I took from it, which it was just that, being that it went along one of London's most commercial roads, but I mean, there's so many commercial roads in London, it probably isn't, but a very big commercial road. And being that we had walked our way through London to get there in the first place, and we had seen all of the bullshit that you see within the world of capitalism in 2025. There was people queued up outside stores that sold toys. There was people waiting,
caviar and fucking
hungrily
chutney.
Yeah, you know, the absolute monstrosity of capitalism was on full show. Yeah, you know, in kind of such a blunt way. That walking this Hindu float through the middle of it and chanting a mantra and whatever it was that we were caught up in was just so bizarre in that context. Yeah. And there was one moment, and I don't know what this really I think this is going to stick with me for a long time, and it was the one thing that I really clearly remember. There was one point where we were walking along, and there's so many people on this thing, and it's this massive crowd. Everybody's chanting, everybody's dancing. There's these these, like we say, these huge wagons being dragged through the town, and all of a sudden, somebody sort of pushed me a little bit, and it was a woman who had, it was almost like comedic. It was a woman who literally had like 4 ginormous shopping bags, who'd obviously decided she'd come out of somewhere, I don't know what shop it was. She'd come out of one of these boutique shops and decided she really had to get to one that was across the road. And she didn't give a fuck if there was a Hare Krsna festival going on. She was just going to push her way through with her massive shopping bags in order to get into, like you say, like Fortnum & Mason's or some shop that sells cakes for 15 quid. And it was just so incongruous. It was just like it was a bit like what I was talking about with my parents and the Christian relative. It was sort of this woman who was just sort of like, what I'm doing is important. These people are weird. They need to get out of my way because I'm doing something brilliant. And what she was doing was so empty.
Yeah.
You know, it was like just spending money on old shit.
Yeah.
That isn't going to provide your life with any sort of happiness beyond maybe a couple of minutes after you bought it.
We talked about, or I asked you, you know, what do you think the purpose of parades in general and public religious expressions of religion are? And I talked about perhaps it's about not just recruiting could be one, or showing off could be another, and I mean showing off in a lovely way. But I think it's also something about waking people up, and I think there's so many different ways in which you could wake up and realize something. You know, that's why people, you know, why there's really dark and weird and horrible language in films and in songs. Sometimes it's like it's not that person means it. It's about waking you up with something horrific, or waking you up with something that's hard to hear or hard to look at. And the same can happen with, you know, joyous things. And I think something about a Hare Krishna festival going down these roads in a very public way, some people might look and go, oh, look at those weirdos. But it's a little bit like what you were saying. It's like it's seeing something else and going, well, I wonder why they've chosen that way. I wonder what that is. And, you know, being kind of like shocked out of your day for a moment. So it's just interesting to have, you know, this religion that's about generosity and about, you know, the meaning in life is about serving others and just pure joy in giving yourself over to a higher meaning. And it didn't, this woman like actively staring at the ground, trying to avoid having to face that.
Yeah, and this is presumptuous, and I mean I'm placing this all on this woman's shoulders, I suppose, but it wasn't just her. I mean, obviously, commerce was just going on everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, you know, the Hare Krishna thing was clearly the weird thing going through the street.
Yeah.
Everything else was kind of as normal.
Yeah.
But I'd like to think that there was a possibility that something like that, just walking past you on the street, might make you think to yourself, oh, wow.
Yeah.
I don't know, something along the lines of those people look like they're doing something interesting, or, you know, or it might make you just question, even in a vaguely subconscious way or a tiny way, did I really need to buy £300 worth of Lego?
Did anyone leave that Fortnum and Mason queue, look over the road and go, you know what?
Fuck this.
Maybe I should just go home.
But I fear that
probably
we live in such a disenchanted world. And that marketing and capitalism are so strong in all of our psyches that actually everybody is that woman with her bags.
Yeah.
It's just something in the way of me getting to do the thing that I'm supposed to do. The thing I've been put on this earth to do is to go shopping because I've got this amount of money from something. Maybe she's worked hard for it, whatever. But that's the reason we're here, right? Yeah. We work hard, we make money, and then we spend it, and I've come out for the day. I'm in London. London. I need to go to these 5 shops that I wanted to go to, and it feels like there's almost no possibility of anybody in that mindset ever thinking to themselves for a second, oh, maybe I shouldn't do this, or maybe that, or again, just that looks quite interesting. Maybe I should find out what that is. And I think that's true. You know, if you think about cathedrals and things like that, you go into cathedrals and they're just awe-inspiring. They've just got all of this incredible architecture and insane art. And if you go into cathedrals with people who aren't interesting, it's like it doesn't touch the sides. Yeah. And I'm not saying that you should walk in and be like, oh my God, I'm a Christian now. I believe in this, that, and the other. Yeah. It's not that. It's just that it should make you feel, and it should make you question a little bit what it is that your God is, and God is currently, some mixture of capitalism and politics and whatever else we're filling our lives with. Mm-hmm. And there's something about the kind of real juxtaposition, between 2025's central London shopping district and this 5,000-year-old festival where human beings are dragging ginormous juggernauts that all say be happy, joy, and have all these all the Hare Krishna chant written all over them. It makes me wonder, like, if I was on that road, if I was one of the shoppers, what would I have made of it? Would I have thought, oh, that looks interesting, or would I just thought, oh, fuck's sake, what are these people shutting the road for? Whereas a Manowar concert is actually quite an enchanted place in a funny sort of way. And I think that it's also a place of commerce, no question. So don't get me wrong. This is an imperfect suggestion. But, you know, the sense of awe that one can get from something, anything, which is more meaningful than buying something, is on show. And the people are caught up in the thing. So therefore, they're not interested in buying anything for that hour and a half. They're just there. Whereas the woman with the shopping bags has no interest in this thing right in front of her. But
also, it's not like Manowar's gone down the road singing. Like, everyone at the Manowar concert is there for that reason.
No, that's kind of what I mean, though. Yeah. Sorry, I'm not saying that woman should have just joined us. What I more mean is the context is different. Yeah. And so therefore, I'm more just saying that therefore that creates a sense of spirituality in a way that a lot of people wouldn't be able to take
100%
from people dancing down a road.
100%. Going to a vegan restaurant as opposed to being not attacked, sorry, that's such a rude way to say it, but approached by a vegan protester in the street when you're just trying to go somewhere. Yeah. What's going to change your mind?
You have to choose to. You've chosen to be at the Manowar gig. That woman didn't choose to be amongst Hare Krsna.
But then there's something to be said for shocking people out of their way. That woman was not changed, but you'd never know. There may have been people in the road that were approached by a really nice Hare Krishna that day, or saw people singing and dancing and thought, goodness me, that looks lovely. I'm just going to have a little think about what I'm doing with my life.
Yeah, that's what I would hope. Yeah, what I'm trying to say is I think that I don't, by the way, think it's just about commerce. I mean, I think it's also about the sort of science project. I mean, it's about the fact that religion is so separate from our lives in its entirety. I'm reading a book at the moment, and one of the points that the guy is making is more or less that for 2,000 years in the West, but also much longer, particularly in India, probably 5,000 years in India, that our minds were open, and we just assumed that religion was real. We assumed that God was real. So therefore, we had this completely different mindset, and it's a mindset which you can never test this. You don't know whether this is even true, but it's quite an interesting suggestion that if you're looking for things like that, and it's just normalized, and that just is how the world is, then you start seeing spirituality within things, and to jump forth to William Blake, who we're about to get to, that's kind of what his thing was all about, walking through Peckham Rye and looking in a tree and seeing angels, or what is it, history exists in a grain of sand, or God exists in a grain of sand. Like, if you're primed for it, then you'll see it. But I think there is a risk, and this is a suggestion, not again completely improvable, and it might be wrong, and I'm happy to accept that it might be wrong. But there's a suggestion in the book I'm reading at the moment, which is saying we've closed ourselves off so much to it, and we've gone down such a scientific road that we've sort of put ourselves in a box where we wouldn't be able to see things anyway. Yeah. So even if there are angels in trees, which I'm not suggesting there are, but even if there are angels in trees, we're not seeing them, and we're never going to see them, and potentially we'll never see them again.
Yeah, we're almost too cynical of a human race nowadays. I'm just thinking of going back to Robert Anton Wilson and reality tunnels, isn't it? It's like when you decide if you believe something, it's confirmation bias. You'll see it everywhere. Yeah. So, choose the thing that makes you happy. No God again.
Indeed. So that was the Hare Krsna festival. Yeah. We then ate a disgusting meal in a pub, which I'm just going to quickly bring up gut health with you all, because this is the first time in about a year where I've just eaten some old. I didn't realise it was going to be some old shit from a packet, but it turned out to be old shit from a packet, and by that time it was too late, and we just said, oh well, it'll probably be fine. I don't know how much salt must have been on this thing, but it basically ruined me. It made my head swell up.
Yeah.
I don't know if I imagined that or not.
It wasn't pleasant, was it?
So, any gut healthers out there, don't accidentally eat something disgusting, because it really, Jesus, it took me days to get over it. Anyway. Yeah. So we then went back to the Unheard Club. We talked about the Unheard Club a number of episodes ago when we saw John Vervaeke and Elizabeth Oldfield talk. and this time it was to see a man called Mark Vernon talk with a girl called Esme Partridge. Esme Partridge, I believe, is a writer. She hasn't written any books, but she's written lots of articles, and I think she's kind of like the religious sort of specialist for various different places, but I think Unheard being one of them. And Mark Vernon has recently written a book called Awake, William Blake and the Power of the Imagination. He is a psychologist, an ex-priest, a writer, and a podcaster.
Yeah, very interesting man.
And a very interesting man. I haven't read the book. You haven't read the book. We went again, more or less. It was like we just kept adding things to this weekend.
Yeah.
We were coming up for Manowar, then realised there was a Hare Krsna festival, then saw this thing was going on and was like, well, it's made to be.
Yeah.
So they were discussing William Blake. I don't know how much we can talk about the ins and outs of the discussion. It's available on YouTube. So as with the other one that we described, it would be worth going and watching it or listening to it. And I haven't read the book yet, like I said, but I'm going to get it. And it's definitely going to be a book that I'm going to read because it sounded really, very good.
Yes.
Maybe we should just jump to what did you take? What did you take from the discussion? We're not going to describe the discussion. What did you take from William Blake? William Blake being obviously the 18th century, 17th century painter and poet who had... Well, I'm not going to describe William Blake to you, actually. You can just find out about William Blake.
Well, I did find out about William Blake because I very much was layperson on this front. You've read and you obviously get to your history of him whenever, but you've read.
I've already told you I'm not telling you a history.
No, you're
of
not
William
telling. No. But you've read a book about William Blake, and I think he's cropped up in your studies potentially. Whereas I think at school learned the Songs of Innocence, Songs of Experience. I think at some point. So that was about as much as I knew about William Blake, and I know he had some kind of weird connection to Christianity and religion, but it was not just a straight up that he was Christian. It was all a bit weirder and wonderful than that. That's all I knew. So I didn't know what to expect. I thought maybe I'll learn about him. Mark Vernon is extraordinarily interesting because he's a psychoanalyst. He linked an awful lot of his kind of experience of William Blake's openness to imagination and openness to, experience to psychoanalysis and being in the room with someone and transference. And there's lots to be said there. So from a mental health perspective, I really enjoyed just all of the little connections between, without talking about William Blake too much, this was a guy who was open to experience and open to every experience and didn't like categories, because if you categorize something, you had a counter category and you would have this is right and this is wrong and this is what leads to war and this is what leads to disagreements and leads to only negative. So his opinion was one of pure experience, pure come at something with no preconceptions and really just take in everything that happens. And with that, he did have weird visions, he did have weird experiences, and instead of being like, oh, this is stupid or I'm wrong or I'm insane, he was like, I'm going to fucking go with this, and made some of the most incredible art and poetry and, had major life-changing experiences that only brought him joy and intrigue.
One of his most famous pictures, which they brought up in the talk, was Isaac Newton busy doing his maths and his science, whilst behind him is just this sort of smorgasbord of bizarre, like the bizarre realities that were going around him, weird fish and all this sort of stuff, to suggest, that like, again, sort of what we were talking about, really. While your head is in the book, you're not actually experiencing the thing that you're reading about.
And I think
the map is not the territory.
They did mention that, and I thought, oh, here we go. Robert Anton Wilson again. There was something else that he linked, which I think we talked about a few episodes back, about diagnoses and things of that nature. There was just something I really liked about his take on Blake. And again, I only have his take on Blake, really, because I really don't know much about Blake. But this kind of idea of dealing with what's happening rather than naming things. What does naming anything really, really bring you? And he talked about that, a diagnosis is a cluster of symptoms, but it's not the cause. So it's more important to sit with someone, use your extra sensory perception in some way. That's what transference is. It's, a feeling in the room that you notice, you can't quite explain, but you sit with it, you think about it, you think, well, why is this happening? But not just why is this happening, you experience it with the other person and say, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm noticing, what does that mean for you, what does this mean? And you're not giving the answers and you're not finding the answers right away. It's about experiencing something with that person, reflecting the experience, figuring it out together, figuring out what these gut feelings mean, as opposed to naming something and saying, this is what you have, this is what we're doing, this is this and not this. Like, it's about taking that apart and being like, why is this useful? Is this actually useful? Is this actually living? Are we missing the point by focusing on these little details all the time? And I think they, this is where they talk about divine and the oneness of things. And it's like everything is also in the particulars and in the details is the whole point of, a bigger oneness of things. So splitting it into the details and pitching one against another is missing the point, which I just like as a whole. I don't know, it's definitely piqued my interest, like as a way of being, as a way of just, I like the idea of being open and not denying one thing in place of another thing, and just closing yourself off deliberately to things just makes no sense to me. It also crossed ever so slightly, just my last point is, we've brought up Marcus Aurelius in the last few episodes because it just happened to be reading meditation slowly. And something that I take from him is very much this idea of nature, and when things are natural, they can't be wrong. And so it's this idea of, he challenges when people say things are right and wrong. It's like, well, if someone's done that action to you, but a human being who is a natural person has done that action, it's not just wrong because you didn't like it. They're a natural being and their nature meant that was right for them. It's just about challenging the idea of right and wrong just because you don't like something, or because you've decided that I'm a this and not a that, so that's wrong. I'm just enjoying all these people that seem to challenge that and go, actually, don't do that straight away. You're missing something. You might be missing a huge part of it by categorizing everything. Anyway, that was my main thing I took from it.
Yeah, the transference thing is probably the main thing that I took from it. And maybe I'm just going to say what you said in different words, but I think mine was a very direct experience, because the other thing was the suggestion. I think it was only really a suggestion that transference is, and I think this is how Blake would have viewed it. Transference is kind of a form of like spirituality. It's a form of the connection between two people, which is completely untestable. Yeah. It's completely unscientific. But my experience is, having been a psychiatric nurse for a long time, that it's absolutely real. Mm-hmm. And so on its simplest, on the absolute simplest, transference is way bigger than this, but on the absolute simplest, just in case you don't really know what we're talking about, is the idea that, if you're talking to someone and you're just talking about the weather and there's nothing much going on, but you feel quite angry with them. What that means is that they're feeling angry about something. Ultimately, again, super simplistic, but you're feeling their feelings, and there's no way of you knowing that. It's probably, and it could definitely be described as millions of tiny little clues. Yeah. It might be something about their eyes or their, whatever, the way they're standing, all millions of different things. And body language is obviously a sort of version of this. There's so many different versions of this, which are just these things that we just know. And when you learn to read transference, for me, quite early on, I did a psychoanalysis course as a part of like how to use psychoanalysis on an acute psychiatric unit, which sounds mental really, but was a really useful course. And I found that knowing about transference and trusting I was never wrong almost in that context. If I trusted how I was feeling, I knew how the other person was feeling. And and so once you've had that experience and you've basically decided yourself, this is a real thing, no question, you suddenly realize, well, yes, it is a real thing from your experience, but you cannot prove it. There's nothing scientific about it. There's no way of even saying that it exists, but it definitely exists.
Yeah. I mean, it has to. Psychoanalysis is the thing.
Well, yeah.
These poor people don't have jobs if it doesn't exist.
Well, no, yeah, but you could argue that psychoanalysis is all claptrap and they shouldn't have jobs. So that doesn't prove anything. But I think, but your lived experience does to some extent. Mm. And of course, I could be completely delusional, but I don't think I am, because lots of other people also feel this thing, and it is kind of a thing that's generally accepted and has been placed into a scientific context. So, you know, within psychoanalysis and within psychotherapy more broadly, and to some extent within psychiatry, it's sort of been, it gets described in ways that make it sound like a scientific practice to some extent. But it isn't. It's just this weird thing that we all know.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting to consider that in a spiritual context. It's interesting to think to yourself, wow, transference is kind of like magic.
Yeah, and he did a really nice, he being Mark Vernon, brought it back round to a simple thing that we could all connect with, which was, when you're feeling depressed, we all know that going outside will help you. And he worded loads of like sciencey reasons, we know that getting a bit of exercise is good for you, your endorphins, fresh air, being around nature, we're just told is good for you, blah, 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 blah. And he was like...
mud has antidepressant... I read this in a magazine today. Mud has antidepressant qualities. If you rub mud on your hands, cheers you up.
Really?
I mean, I think that they've only done studies on rats, and so there's a suggestion that it might not entirely be true of humans. People do. But there's a genuine school of thought that is that going out and putting mud all over you.
Oh my god, because people do
which
say
might
really
be mud baths, might be. But anyway.
Oh, intrigue.
Sorry,
but he said, I'm willing. He didn't say I'm willing to be fluffy, but he was willing to be fluffy and say, but also, can it not just be that you go outside and there are bigger energies than you? You are literally going from your tiny little house where you're sitting there being miserable, that you go outside and you are connecting to the wider world in an energetic way that we know works. We can try and science everything, and it's the same with the transference. We can be sciencey. We can try and name every single little body language and every minute little change in your voice and every little eye flutter that you've done. But to name it all it's too long. The feeling is what matters in the moment. And it's the same with going outside and connecting to everything, and to all of a sudden how huge the world is all of a sudden comes upon you a bit. But even trying to name it all right now is still not doing it service. It just works. Yeah. And sciencing it doesn't bring us anywhere closer to.
But the Blakean way of looking at that is that experience is real in of itself. Yeah. So it doesn't really matter. This is we always try and prove things with science, or try and prove things with examples, or try and prove, but it doesn't matter. That's not the point. If it's real for you, then it's real. Yeah. Now you can run away with that, and that can turn itself into all sorts of madnesses and all sorts of kind of conspiracies and all sorts of different things. You can't just say, I've decided this and therefore this is how things are. But it's not that. That's not really what this is talking about. This is talking about the fact that you've experienced means that it's real for you. Every single thing that you experience is a real thing. Yeah. And that experience is going to be affected by all the other people around you who are also having experiences, and those things are mixing with each other, and that's where sort of transference and things comes in. Yeah, and the whole thing is, I don't know what. Just
a big weird interplay of stuff. I mean, you've read a bit about Blake before, so you knew some stuff, but I think this has just definitely piqued my interest in as much as just to continue learning about someone who was so open. He did also bring it back to imagination, because part of the title was imagination, wasn't it? And it was about
Blake's thing is imagination. Yeah. Or how he's remembered is his extraordinary imagination.
Yeah. And someone asked a question that when they asked it, I thought, I don't know if that's a really good question. But then his answer, I was like, no, that was a really good question then, which was about, how do we know the difference between imagination and daydreaming? And he was like, well, it's what you do with it. It's imagination is, are you going to, something about disclosing yourself to the world and the world disclosing itself back to you and you continuing it.
Yeah, in kind of creative... that it leads somewhere. Yeah. As opposed to whereas daydreaming is just a dead end. It's just you just think of something and then you think of something else.
Exactly that. And I like that that was a really nice takeaway. It was quite near the end with the question answers thing. just that kind of idea of, and we've come across it in John Vervaeke, this kind of, it's the participatory knowing of the world that's so important, and that's how we do meaning making. And he tried to avoid meaning making because he said, back in the day, meaning was there to be had. This is, again, Blake would have argued against meaning making and just saying, look, meaning is there for you to be a part of. Like, the world is meaning, and you have to co-create. He wouldn't have said co-create, but that's probably close to it. It's being a part of it, and it shows itself to you, and you continue, and it's this upward feedback cycle of just having meaning in life. So I really like that delineation between daydreaming and imagination being the important one. It's not just fantasy, and it's not just making stuff up. There's a point to that. And it also makes me then want to try and read poetry, because I, as a anxious, scared, I'm never going to understand things person, that's exactly the sort of attitude I need to have in life. It's like, it's about having insights, about waking up. We were talking about waking up and realizing things. You only do that if you're challenged, if you use your imagination. If you don't necessarily get it, what's getting it? What's, oh, well done, you understood it. Now what? It's about how it changes you and how you then react to the world, I guess.
Well, that is what, that's what poetry is for. That's in a lot of ways what art is for, isn't it? You mentioned the fact that, because also what we did while we were in London, having just had a pop at sort of materiality things, we also did quite a lot of shopping ourselves. But it was mostly book shopping, so, we were allowed.
And we went to an art gallery.
We went to an art gallery. But you said that while we were looking at some books, there was a book that was something like 50 Zen koans and the answers. Yeah. And so we've almost certainly talked about this before, but Zen koans are things which have no answers. I mean, that's literally the only point to them. The idea of them is that there's something to meditate on and to sort of open your doors of perception.
Yeah.
They're supposed to not have answers. And it's interesting that there was a book that was like, and this is what they mean.
Yeah, 50 koans and their common answers.
But going back to you saying about feeling sort of anxious about reading poetry because you don't feel like you're going to understand it, the thing is that not understanding it is as worthwhile as understanding it.
Yeah.
And there is no really understanding it.
Yeah.
You just have to take it in.
Yeah.
And it will do something to you.
Yeah. And I think
good poetry, well, not all poetry.
But that's it. And I felt more inspired by just hearing about like Blake's kind of work and ideas and, his kind of purpose of the imagination, and being open. Yeah, it inspired me to feel that way a lot. And I, as like I just say, as an anxious person, I think that's a thing I definitely see the purpose of doing, and I want to do. Gonna get me some poetry books.
Good.
But yeah,
we've got plenty. I think we'll leave it there. I don't know if the question of did this create a sense of spirituality is appropriate for this, because it was just a sort of book discussion reading. So the event itself, I don't think, but maybe the subject matter is not unfair to ask.
Yeah, subject matter, definitely a sense of meaning, in as much as here's someone who's showing you the way to experience meaning and to find meaning. Not make it necessarily because it's already there, and or reminding you to do things that create a sense of awe. He found awe in everything because he was open and willing to look and willing to not shut himself off straight away, and through all of that he was transcendent. Like, I don't know, like William Blake seems to, again, my very, very lay person's introduction, I'm just so like convinced that this William Blake is amazing.
Yeah,
nearly everyone already knows that. I'm just very excited to. So I felt when I didn't know what Fugazi sounded like, and then I was about to find out like 30 years too late, but it's never too late. And now Blake, for 200 years after he died, I'm about to find out.
I think a comparison between William Blake and Fugazi is entirely apt.
I do.
I think that's perfect. Yeah. I loved it, actually. And interestingly, I had a thought as we were going in, because again, actually, in a similar way to the Hare Krsna festival, we talked about the Unheard Club and the experience of going to it last time, so I won't go into it. But fundamentally, it's another place where we don't necessarily feel entirely at home,
not at all,
and feel a little bit. We probably stand out like sore thumbs to some extent.
Oh yeah.
I doubt anybody gives a toss, but it doesn't matter because it's what you're experiencing. And so when we were waiting to go in, I have to admit there was a part of me that sort of thought to myself, we shouldn't have bothered doing this. My exact thought was, I could have just watched this on YouTube. We're going to be able to watch the entire thing on YouTube. We could have just gone home and done that tomorrow. And it's just two people talking. It would be exactly the same. But of course, in keeping with what was then discussed in the discussion, actually the being in the room with other human beings, probably to some extent the transference from them all, experiencing people in person is completely different to experiencing them on a screen, of course, but also just like having energy within the room, probably to some extent it's a little bit like going to the cinema as opposed to watching something at home. Like you're more turned on to it because you're there.
Yeah.
So many different reasons, none of which I can put my finger on or describe, so it's useless for a podcast, but so many different reasons as to why actually the experience of spending an hour and a half in that room was completely different and better in every conceivable way than it would have been had we just gone home and watched it on YouTube.
Yeah.
I don't think that really means anything about whether it was spiritual or transcendent or anything, but I would very much recommend anybody, having said all of that, to watch it on YouTube, because you can't go and see it live again because it's happened.
It's already happened. Watch it on YouTube, buy the book, go read some William Blake, go look at some paintings.
All of those things. And also a little shout out as well to William Blake versus the World, which is a book by John Higgs, who's one of the finest non-fiction writers of our era.
There we are.
Quite recent and very much worth reading. We will call it a day there. I hope you haven't mounded. I hope you haven't I hope you don't mind this intermission from the Eightfold Path. I'm sure we had you on tenterhooks waiting for the 5th edition, so I hope we haven't ruined your day by doing this, talking about Manowar and Hare Krsna and William Blake. But I don't care really. I enjoyed it. So this podcast, as we always say, comes out every 2 weeks. We don't advertise it on social media in any way. So if you're listening, thank you very much, and please do tell your friends if you would like. And we will see you again in 2 weeks' time.
Yep.
And you can contact us at shamcityroasters@gmail.com if you like. And I don't think I have anything else to say apart from that we'll be back on the Noble Eightfold Path on the next episode.
And diddly do.
Unless something wild happens that we just have to talk about.
Oh my gosh.
Bye.
Bye.